Oh, hey, let's start the show.
For Thursday, March 25th, 2021. Welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com. Hello and welcome to the show this week. It's Norm here with getting right into it. You got Jeremy Williams
What's up, fellas?
and Kishore Hari.
It's finally happened, gentlemen. I've been waiting years for this. A hockey team is having a Thanos night at a hockey game where they're wearing Infinity Gauntlet inspired jerseys and gloves. It's finally happened. My impact on the world is finally showing up in real ways.
Worlds colliding.
We
I love
didn't
it.
even get to our top story, but that pretty much that would be your top story of the week. Now this team, I gotta know more about this. They realize that Thanos is the villain of the MCU.
Is he though? I mean, did he do anything wrong? I'm still on that train. Their promo video was hilarious because it's a player snapping with the glove, and all the left-handed hockey gloves they have the Infinity Gems embedded in it.
Wow.
And so it just looks really good. They're auctioning off jerseys and gloves a couple days after the game for charity. This is a minor league hockey team based in Jacksonville, and it's just like, it's hilarious to me.
Like, of all the characters in the MCU to make your icon, I guess there's an inevitability about it. Maybe the gloves was the thing, right? The hockey gloves are big, are gauntlet-like, and it's certainly a recognizable character. Wow, bold move. Good job, minor league hockey team marketing person and players to get on board with this. If people wanted to find out more or watch this game with those jerseys, is that just a thing on the internet?
Oh, it's a thing. Just follow my Twitter feed. You'll get links to stuff. You have to literally get like a season package to a minor league hockey hockey TV subscription to watch the game, but I don't think the game's where it's at. It's the Monday following where the auction takes off.
Well, I must apologize. We're a little bit short on time. I am literally so short on time because in 8 days now, I believe, according to the schedule, we have a big schedule in our house of things that are happening over the next 8 days. But next 8 days from now,
You get a PlayStation 5.
oh my! I wish that would be quite the delivery. It's a different type of delivery, a delivery of a different kind. Oh, imagine if we went in for a C-section and outpulled a PlayStation 5. That would feel very much like one of those 90s
no.
era Sega commercials, right?
Oh, God.
It'd
Sega!
be quite the unboxing for sure.
Let me cut the umbilical cord, chew off the umbilical cord of the PS5. No, it's HDMI. That's DisplayPort. No, Baby 2 is coming in 8 days. So I think hopefully we'll try to do a podcast next week. Maybe not, depending on how things are going. But taking it day by day, literally, but still carving out this hour to catch up with you guys. We're going to skip, I'm sorry, the tested timestamp robot that so generously and accurately indexes our episodes in the YouTube comments. If you don't know, if you watch the video on YouTube, there's always a timestamp robot, but based on musical cues. But we're not doing our top story. We're going to skip right to the pop culture moment. Last week we had recorded this right after the morning after the Snyder cut was released. And I don't want to retread too much ground. In fact, looking into Kishore's eyes right now, he's ready to snap this conversation out of existence. But I do want to follow up and say, having now seen the Zack Snyder version of Justice League twice in its entirety, I did it once on a late night. Danica fell asleep, but I wanted to watch it again with hers, and we just put it on a second time. Forgive me, sure. I gotta say, it's a lot better than the Joss Whedon cut. It's a lot better than the theatrical cut.
So I broke down and I watched it late last night. It's fine.
It's fine.
It's better. It's way better than the Joss Whedon thing. which is what we said would happen. Still not a good movie. Like, there's all sorts of problems with it. I like the ambition of it in terms of what it would have opened up in terms of the larger universe. I like how it treated some of the ancillary characters like Flash and Cyborg. They were much, much better than in the original. But a lot of the same issues with like not having a good villain, not having
Oh,
um,
Steppenwolf is much improved in this one, I think. He has
he's improved.
motivation.
He's still a bad villain.
He's a
Like
puppy
it's
dog
just
eyes.
it's he's a comically bad villain. So I just think there's all sorts of moments in this where you're like, why am I watching this piece? And it's because it's a 4-hour movie, so it's filled with all sorts of fluff that you don't need.
But
There's actually like a pretty decent 2-hour, maybe 2.5 hour.
That's all I was
movie.
saying. I think the big takeaway is that in 2017, instead of bringing in a new director/writer to do expensive reshoots, to basically restructure the film and just keep some of the action elements and the kind of overarching story, they could have just released a 2.5 hour cut of something that would have been cohesive, would have been tighter, would have definitely helped conclude the trilogy that Zack Snyder had made with Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and Justice League. But I think we also see this release through rose tinted glasses because of the almost unprecedented fan effort to make this happen. It's even though there have been things like the Donner cut and the Blade Runner director's cut and plenty of re-releases of films, this feels like a special circumstance because of all the things surrounding the circumstances of the movie, the lockdown, the launch of HBO Max. We're never going to see, never say never, but it's unlikely that we'll see Warner Brothers or any studio putting $70 million to let a director re-release a big budget film and re-edit it for something like a streaming service. And what blows my mind is they did reshoots. Warner Brothers allowed Zack Snyder to film a new scene. All of the reshoots were just for the epilogue scene. I mean, spoiler alert, it's the nightmare scene in the epilogue. That was the new thing that was shot. So I don't get the reasoning behind that if they're not planning to continue this. It's pure fan service. Like it does nothing for a story. I think it actually detracts from the experience of the story because it leaves you wondering things that will never come. And tonally, I think it's totally off. The writing is not great there. But it's also interesting that this is a film you can give an editing, a fresh editor, an experienced editor, film editor, and ask them to cut it down and see what 2-hour version you can get out of it, because you could definitely get a tighter story.
I enjoyed the comments that said that it was the same film but in slow motion.
There's a lot of slow motion. I mean, Flash must be Zack Snyder's favorite character because the way he perceives time is in slow motion. Yeah.
I mean, I watched the first 2 hours of it, and I have a unique perspective from you guys because I never saw the first one, and I certainly didn't follow any of this fan, craze about whether or not he should make it and all the lead up to that. So that's not a part of the buzz I felt. And I thought like it was all right. I thought it was an okay movie. It was just extraordinarily long. What was that? The movie that the guys who did The Matrix made that was like 4 hours long with Tom Hanks.
Oh, you're talking about the Wachowskis made Atlas, Cloud Atlas.
Cloud Atlas. I felt like
Cloud Atlas.
I liked Cloud Atlas too, but it was long and longer than it needed to be, and it felt like the Cloud Atlas of superhero movies, where it just took its time saying things, and it takes itself very seriously.
That's
like,
this
this
MO.
is not. That's not a Marvel film in any way. Like even when the comic relief comes in, it's almost out of place.
Yes,
because it's a dark, brooding tone,
and that's where the clash of tone was most apparent in the theatrical release, because Joss Whedon, he infused so much of his more lighthearted sensibilities, some stuff of really questionable taste, and it didn't feel cohesive at all. And that's why the movement happened to have this restored. Could this movie have used an intermission if it was going to be 4 hours long? Probably. Hamilton
on HBO Max?
Like a 30-second countdown intermission.
Right.
The plan to put this in. David leans you're talking about classic big movies. Did Godfather have an intermission?
Holy Grail did.
Yeah, and Lawrence of Arabia, right, had an intermission. Let people.
2001 is the last great movie that had an intermission.
Yeah, it could certainly help. I mean, you're taking the intermission right now, Jeremy. You're still
I
in the
know.
intermission.
Well, I'm watching. I'm like watching one part at a time.
Oh,
I'm taking it.
chapters.
Yeah, it works that way. I mean, it's like watching a TV show these days.
Totally.
Falcon
Do
and
not
Winter Soldier.
mention this movie with those movies that earned intermission. Let's stop with this. Let us.
I wanted to ask one quick question. Does it? I had understood that Zack Snyder wasn't going to use a single frame from Joss Whedon's version. Now,
Correct.
did he mean of the finished film or of the shoots?
Of the
because
shoots.
so he used alternate takes for everything.
Well, sorry, Joss Whedon used a lot of what Zack Snyder shot, right? He had to, because they weren't going to reshoot the entire
Right.
theatrical release. So most of the action sequences are actually Zack Snyder shot action sequences, but re-edited. The final battle, which when you finish the film you'll get to, is heavily re-edited with additional new dialogue and new action pieces. So it's a puzzle piece together. It's not that Zack Snyder, because Zack Snyder has never seen the theatrical cut, so he's just pulling from the same reels that he shot with to make his edit, and whether or not they're the same takes is all.
I see.
Zack Snyder doesn't know. The other producers, his wife, would know. There's the whole story of a Variety reported when, after the theatrical cut was edited, they showed Deborah Snyder and they showed Christopher Nolan, who's a producer on these films, and both of them walked out of that screening saying Zack must never see this, and they have never let him see it, and he has no interest in seeing it. So he's actually much like in your position. It was never a call and response thing. He just got to finish and edit the film as he wanted to put it.
Got it.
Yeah. Moving on. Hopefully we can all move on from Justice League and the Snyder Cut. There's plenty of other DC films and eventful things still happening that are tangentially related, but we're going to switch back to the chicken soup of pop culture, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Oh, warm and fuzzies. You got wholesome hockey teams wearing their uniforms, but we got more content now. Well, before we talk about the TV show that debuted on Friday, big news just announced yesterday. Disney has rearranged the release schedule slate. Previously they crammed in 2 years of Marvel films to put out this year. We're still getting 4 Marvel films this year, but they got pushed back a little further. And Black Widow, which was going to come out in May, they didn't indeed printed out even the cardboard standees for theaters where theaters were open, is now pushed to July 9th with a Disney Plus $30 premiere. Actually, they didn't say what price it was. We assume it's $30 because that's what Raya and Mulan were, but it will be a Disney, they're well within their rights. If they wanted to say it's $50, right, for Black Widow, I assume it's going to be $30, but it will be theater day and date with Disney Plus premiere access. The same goes with Cruella, the Emma Stone 101 Dalmatians prequel movie. They're going to put that also. That was going to be only theatrical release, but simultaneous releases. Other films got pushed down the line. Eternals and Shang-Chi a little bit pushed, but Spider-Man, what is it? No Way Home will still be in December, and that's a co-Sony and Disney release.
Kishore had suggested they probably won't try this $30, what do they call it?
Premiere access.
Premiere access thing again since after Raya. But here they are doing it one more time, and I think that after this, they'll have enough data to make that call. Yeah. Because this is a Marvel film, and this is going to prove whether or not it's they can make money doing it this way, with which would have been a huge blockbuster hit. I mean, a Disney animated film is one thing, but I think Marvel PG-13 full-fledged is another.
I would disagree.
I'm going to take the L on that take.
Well,
this seems like a thing they'll explore.
Yeah, and you're right. Take the L because we didn't anticipate they would. I didn't think they would do it because they want to make $1 billion back. I don't think the data is just about how many people subscribe. The data is ever changing because it's also about what theaters are opening. The studios want to be timed to be the first massive movie release at the inflection point when people feel comfortable going to theaters and enough theaters are open across the country, right? And globally.
But
I mean,
that may not coincide with people having vaccinations.
well, that's why July 9th, I think they've done the calculations. May was maybe too ambitious, but, sure, your other take from a week ago is that by May 1st, we're all going to be vaccinated. So by July 9th, the idea is that, that's post July 4th. The administration here has really kind of set that July 4th mind frame as a time when, we want some semblance of normalcy with masks in the world. And it's kind of scary. You have parts that like Joey was telling me down in LA where he lives, theaters have opened in California. He's looking on the AMC website, just checking the app, sold out screenings every show for things like Raya because people are hungry to get back into seats and wanting to go to theaters.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I'll be on the let's get rid of theaters train, until they're gone, because I just don't like the experience as much as I always expect I will. But I also do think legit there's a argument to be made that even once you're vaccinated, there's going to be people after a year of this, or a year and a half, of just having a fear of going into a movie theater and being in a crowd of people. Maybe it's not reasonable, maybe it's not scientific, but that is how we've been conditioned for the past year.
Well, and that's a precautionary measure, right? Like people, yes, precaution is something we would advise. I would advise. You would certainly be in the camp of Warner Brothers and HBO of doing the day and date. All big budget movies that they had coming out in 2021 is going to be on HBO Max day and date, from Godzilla at the end of this month to The Matrix 4 to Space Jam. But even them, they kind of backtracked a little bit. Just this week, they signed a deal with Regal Cinemas to say that 2021 is unique, but 2022 and going forward,
Right.
there's still going to be a theatrical exclusivity window of 45 days in the US before it goes on HBO Max. So where there's money, right, and the theaters still, that's where all the box office receipts are justifying the price of these films, the production budgets. We're not getting rid of theaters, and I'm happy we're not getting rid of the theatrical experience.
Hey, if television production budgets looks like Falcon and Winter Soldier, sign me up, man. I'm okay with it.
Speaking of that, I'm going to whip out the spoiler light because we're going to talk about Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The three of us watched episode 1 out of 6. This is a 45-minute long show. It is big budget, like you said, Jeremy. I'm digging it. What a different tone right off the bat than WandaVision.
Yeah, this isn't a water cooler show. This is a straight up mini action film. That initial scene relatively early scene of Falcon fighting the helicopters, just what a spectacle. It ranks up there as one of the better fights that we've seen in the entire MCU, just because of how it was shot, the kind of the details, the way the fight evolved, the surprising nature of it, the kind of callbacks in it. This was spectacular, and it transitioned from those moments of pure action to these kind of more intimate moments, like Bucky in the psychiatrist office, Sam with his sister in the loan office, really, really well. And we all knew what this story was going to be about. It was going to be about Falcon taking the mantle of being Captain America. How quickly and succinctly they laid that out at the beginning of the episode was really well done. It makes me excited. I think the ceiling for this show isn't as high as for WandaVision because it's not groundbreaking. It's not bringing a new level of imagination. But sign me up for 6 episodes of pure action. And Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan are great actors.
Is it only 6 episodes?
It's only 6 episodes, limited series. What's very clear is the money's on the screen. The way they budget these out isn't, we have 10 million per episode, spend that money as you see. They knew they needed right off the bat to have a big action sequence to put the money on the screen so that people see this on the same level as a theatrical production. And so that fight scene, I mean, I'm sure there'll be other amazing fight scenes, but that one, you're right, it was 100%. It was like I was in the theater watching it. It also, tonally, it very clear that these all the Marvel series, like the 4 that we know are coming out, from WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, and the Hawkeye show, all feel like epilogues rolling off of the consequence of Endgame. Right.
Yeah.
Like this is like WandaVision was basically a the TV consequence, right? The story, long form storytelling consequence of what happened with the death of the Vision in Infinity War, and this is right off of the end of Endgame. We know Loki is also about the Loki that escaped in Endgame in that alternate the past, in the 2012 version when they went to the past. So this is a way for them to tell the stories that we would never see on the big screen, and it's great. They fit very complementary. What I noticed the most was the sheer number of locations. Well, we thought that WandaVision was a TV show because it was a tribute to television, but they shot it mostly on a studio backlot in sound stages where they built these sets, and I didn't know if that was a necessity because of the format or because of budgeting. Here, they had a whole crazy Bucky action sequence and had like a Born Identity style assassination that must have been like a multi-day shoot just to get that thing done on location. It was great.
Is Falcon's drone a new thing? Because I didn't remember him having that.
It was in
Civil
War, so it's not a new character, and clear it is in the comics, but sometimes in the comics it's actually been a real bird. So this is a good iteration on that.
Yes.
Is it supposed to be a Stark Tech?
I mean, in the show it is.
It is.
In the show,
Okay.
I think it's very. You have that one line of dialogue that the crazy Stark Tech that you have, Falcon, right? And he's repairing it. And
you know what's funny is my son and I, we watched it last night. We watched literally the first 2 minutes. And we were thinking, this is really out there. They're doing some different stuff. And then we realized it was, for whatever reason, it had defaulted to Japanese.
Oh, Disney Plus, really?
Yeah.
That's
We were like,
weird.
this is cool. My son was like, wow, I bet people who speak Japanese are really into this. And then
That version, I'm sure. Yeah, that's really funny. Yeah, check your settings.
Yeah, we did. We're set now.
And what else I was going to say? Yeah, I like the more personal storytelling. These are all the kind of conversations and explorations of their personal lives that we may not have gotten in the film. We know there's supposed to be some return of some familiar villains. The ending of this episode with the U.S. agent is the character in the comics that's clearly the costume of the one that the government kind of props up to be the new Captain America. The costume looks okay. Looks kind of a little cheesy, and maybe intentionally. And the actor there, that is Kurt Russell's son, Wyatt Russell.
Oh wow! So he's not a Marvel character.
He
don't
is.
know who.
He is a Marvel character. Yeah.
So you know who this is? You guys, as usual, have the inside track and
We do.
see where this is going.
There isn't much to this. He is a government shill. And guess what? You got in like the 5 seconds he was on screen.
Yeah.
Government shill.
Yeah.
So
Okay, right, okay, but he's not
that's all you need to
he's
know.
not a superhero.
So
Or a bad superhero.
we don't know how the MCU will interpret the story if he is superpowered. I believe he will be superpowered. I don't know if it's the same super soldier serum.
Right.
My personal hope with this is that they dive into the in the comics, Falcon becomes Captain America. He becomes a version of Captain America, and I don't know whether they'll give him the super soldier serum, but if they tie this with the Captain America Secret Origin storyline in the Marvel comics, I feel like thematically that could work. Sure, if you know what I mean.
I do.
Yeah, with
I'm hoping for a William Hurt appearance
Mm.
in this show. That's my only. No, I'm not going down the conspiracy train. You can't force me.
It's not
But
a mystery
that's
show.
The one I have.
This isn't the mystery box type show, which I'm actually very thankful for this time around. Okay, last things in pop culture. We're going to do a little bit of Lego news. Lego dropped some surprise announcements. They have maybe in time for May 4th coming up, some new Star Wars Lego. So some of the sets that have been very popular have been these helmets that are maybe like 600 pieces, 7 inches tall or so, that fit on these stands. They've done, Stormtrooper, Vader, Boba Fett, and they just announced a Scout Trooper. It looks pretty great, but also an Imperial droid that looks really, really good. I really like
Yeah.
the dig of this. I did really dig the look of this. Yeah,
Yep, it's really good looking. It's how large is it?
I think about same like 8 inches tall or something. Actually, it looks maybe a little bit taller. Like with the antenna, it might look like 10 inches tall or so. Yeah, yeah. It looks like it has appropriate greeblies, like Lego greeblies on
Yeah,
this. Yeah, this is the Imperial Pro droid that was at the beginning of Empire, the one that scouts Hoth, which is actually much bigger. Like that's supposed to be human size. That droid when it floats around. The scale of it was always tough to see in the show or in the movie. And then
does the
also,
Lego come with a self-destruct mechanism?
I mean, I don't think so. That's what the child brings, right? You
They're gonna
self-destructed by just kind of throwing it
Got
to the
it.
Hey,
floor.
you barely touch it, and it self-destructs
Right.
a few
Yeah,
seconds later.
exactly.
Yeah. And then also a new space shuttle. They've done many space shuttles in the past. This one is the Space Shuttle Discovery. It looks amazing. And it has in its compartment, it has in its cargo hold, the Hubble Space Telescope. Looks really cool.
Yeah, they come with 3 different stands. Did you see that? So you can actually mount them separately, or you can mount the Hubble inside the space shuttle's bay, but there's different stands for everything. So however you want to display it, it's very cool. Lots of silver parts.
Kind of like how the space shuttles are now displayed in different museums. Every one is displayed differently. So,
Really?
yeah. The one in LA and the one in New York, to complete, like, you get different angles for this. That was part of the proposal. The museums had to come up with unique ways to actually display them. Okay, well, that does it for pop culture. Before we move on, though, with our next segment, I want to let you know that this episode of This Is Only a Test is made possible with support from Storyblocks. We all know that video is the most effective way to capture someone's attention, but the storytellers today are challenged with creating more video content at a higher quality than ever before. Thankfully, Storyblocks makes it easy to keep up with the growing demands for modern video content so you can bring all of your stories to life and stop sacrificing your vision due to time, budget, or resources. Every video content creator, should have a Storyblocks membership. And with their affordable subscriptions, you can stay on budget while telling the best version of your story. Storyblocks is an ever-growing library of over 1 million high-quality stock assets, including 4K video, After Effects, and Premiere Pro templates, and music and images, sound effects, and the assets are royalty free. And with the unlimited all access plan, you get unlimited downloads of everything in that library. If you're a part of a large creative team, marketing agency, or media organization, Storyblocks has your back with comprehensive coverage for your entire company that enables you to distribute wherever, whenever. Learn more and subscribe today at storyblocks.com/onlyattest. Once again, that's storyblocks.com/onlyattest. Kishore, I know you just bought a new computer so you could get your 3080. Jeremy, when's the last time you built your computer or built a computer? Maybe even with your son?
Maybe a year ago?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I have a nice new PC, and I've upgraded the graphics card since then. I have no problems at all.
When you built it, what processor, right, when you were looking for or doing the research as to
10th gen.
10th gen Intel?
Yeah.
Stuck with Intel.
Yeah, I mean, I know my son's almost a bigger PC nerd than I am these days, and he was trying to get me to go with AMD because apparently they have better multi-core processing. But I just go all in on that single thread sometimes because I don't know, sometimes that's what you want, and I didn't feel like the multi-core stuff was that much far behind.
Well, last week, Intel announced their newest 11th gen desktop chips. It's still part of their 14 nanometer plus process, and reduced number of cores in some cases, but up the clock speed. Clock speed is where they have so much of that rock solid efficiency from their all that fab expertise. But that's this big divide, I think. Right now, if you go to watch any PC building video or any PC building YouTube channel, people are just talking AMD, and rightly so. AMD has done a surge in their in their process efficiency, and they've gone down to 7 nanometer now, even to 5 nanometer for their CPUs and their GPUs, and it's kind of almost a little embarrassing where Intel has been. They have a new CEO, and just yesterday they did a whole big State of Intel announcement. They called it their Engineering the Future event, and they announced changes will come, and you'll see the effects of these changes couple years down the line, so you won't expect them immediately. But part of it is investing in 2 new massive facilities for manufacturing in Arizona. They're going to spend $20 billion to develop new fabs and new foundry services, also allowing to outsource those services to other companies who want to take advantage of that expertise, including partnerships with IBM even. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't think the issue for Intel is going to be AMD. It is in the short term, but we've been through how many of these cycles with Intel and AMD, like where they're releasing chips. Their problem is the M1 chip. And every time Apple releases a product, there's going to be this discussion of whether Intel's dead because Apple is just releasing stuff that's faster than Intel can make. And then the second issue, and I don't know if yesterday's announcement really gets at this, there is a global shortage in all sorts of chips right now. I think they're trying to bring some of that capacity online in the US to address that long term. But can Intel move more quickly than some of these other places? Because whether it's a car, a computer, no matter what, everything, there is massive shortages in this space. So that's the other opportunity, the short-term opportunity I think Intel has to address. And they kind of nibbled at the edges of it, but didn't really get there for my taste.
It's so sad because when you look at their relationship with like Apple and honestly Microsoft, they're caught in the middle. Right? Apple was one of their biggest customers previous to the M series announcements. Definitely, they should have seen it coming. It was right there with Apple developing and improving on all of their process manufacturing for all their iOS hardware, that they were going to move off Intel eventually to unify that. They want to own the hardware and the software. Intel's left running the hardware, which they've fallen behind on, and they still don't control the software because they're beholden to the Microsofts of the world, like Windows. And so, Windows is going to run on x86 and ARM, which it has for a while now. And so Intel just like there's kind of this supplier. They're in the supplier role where the demand isn't there, and they have to create this artificial demand through advertising campaigns like the Justin Long stuff.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like it's always hard to see too far in the future in terms of what we're going to need. I mean, part of me feels like any new graphics or any new CPU, you're going to be fine. Right now, these days, and generally speaking, for most people, that is true. I mean, my stepmom just retired a 9-year-old laptop, and it wasn't even running that bad.
Right.
So the things that people use computers for, who aren't gamers or, content creators, like even like people who are on Twitch and YouTube, they really don't need that much. And so this war is maybe much ado about nothing. It's like we kind of reached this cap. There's how many cores do you need? We've kind of reached the frequency cap that these cores can run on. So it's really just about having redundant cores and multiple CPUs and that kind of thing. And I mean, it's like when it comes to PCs, I think we're kind of past this point where a war is really anything more than just something like a distraction. Well, I do think you're right that like there's mobile processors and other smaller devices is where it's still a little bit more interesting, and certainly graphics cards are crazy expensive right now because they can't create them fast enough. Same thing with the consoles. The Verge just had an article that actually outlaid all of the prices for graphics cards right now, and they're literally like 3x retail prices.
Do they list them in numbers of organs you have to sell off from your body to?
Exactly. Yeah, and that's compounding the problem. I wonder, like on that front, do they even want to go back to normal? Because there's so much demand for their products now and such a buzz about them. It's almost like Nintendo with the Wii when we were suspecting, hey, are they making as many as they actually could? Or do they like that you can't find these things for a year and a half?
You're talking about NVIDIA.
Years? Yeah,
NVIDIA there. Yeah,
yeah,
and Intel, going back to Intel, their competition isn't just previously Apple, their customer, but also Qualcomm and NVIDIA, who are developing products and creating marketplaces for their products that Intel has not done well in. Like NVIDIA is in cars, right? NVIDIA's, but entire initiatives building up and in game consoles, right? In obviously with the Switch and AMD's in game consoles. Intel isn't, and trying to beef up and put money in R&D in their graphics department for desktop. That's a lot of money for a relatively
right.
small part of the overall computing market. And really, there's there's having the marketing of being the best, the thing that people want, the brand recognition and what people want to buy. But where the money really is also in the server space. And that's where,
Hmm.
there's a lot of demand for building up and upgrading server racks, and where they can charge huge amounts, but they have competition there too. Yeah, it's a really tough business to be in, and these can, I mean, resting on your laurels doesn't get you anywhere, nor do questionable business practices. Um, well, Microsoft, big rumor here, it seems to be in talks to buy Discord. Kishore, you're probably the most active Discord user among us. How do you feel about this?
Well, it's hard not to think about what happened when Microsoft bought Skype, and the experience of fleeing Skype that has dominated over the last few years. Discord's been like a lifeline for me during the pandemic, because it's been a more user centric version of Slack, and I've stayed in touch with friends, and I've used it for streaming and all sorts of things.
Can you explain what you mean by more user centric?
I think it's just a friendlier interface for like interests and hobbies that aren't work related. Like when I think of Slack, I think of work, and I think of like productivity and work. Discord is much more social, and I can like hop into voice channels and talk to people. I can use it to support gaming. It has more of a community feel
Hmm.
to it than Slack has for me. uh and uh and I would say like Discord I don't think they're profitable yet, but they made a really healthy amount of revenue last year, so it makes sense that they're on an acquisition target. They've been rumors of being acquired for years by a bunch of companies. So for Microsoft, this just seems smart. Like Microsoft's been in conversations for everything from like buying TikTok and a whole host of companies. They're the one big tech company that isn't getting criticized for antitrust now, even though they dealt with that 20, 30 years ago. So I think it's smart for them. I don't know if you can project the kind of year that Discord had this past year because of the pandemic forward as the normal thing for Discord, but it has certainly ingratiated itself with huge segments of the gaming and streaming community that's going to serve as a rock going forward.
I feel you on the Skype, concern, but they did also buy GitHub, and they have done a good job leaving that alone. So it's possible this could work out for the best. I don't know, and but as far as like whether like how they could put a price tag on it, it's not just about what kind of revenue is Discord capable of earning. That is a huge gold mine of data that
Right,
is just like
right,
unbelievable.
right.
It is, especially and it's all their users. It's a bunch of PC users, who are largely gamers who are all on PC. Who shoot, I mean, I can't even begin to imagine what you could do with
I wonder if
all of that data.
Microsoft keeps tabs on, just. I'm sure there's privacy concerns, and I don't know if they could legally do this. They definitely do it for the App Store. If you buy something from the Microsoft Store, right, the Windows Store, and run the application, they have data about that. But like, just like the adoption rate among the certain types of users for Discord must be very high. Like you look at your system tray, and what are like your half dozen or dozen programs you have running all the time. Slack's among there. For Discord's absolutely on there, right? Messaging is absolutely this big thing. And what was the joke that this is, Microsoft looking to buy yet another Slack competitors to bolster their already existing Slack competitor that they bought in Skype, right? Like they're just trying to own that part of this massive, communications business. And don't forget, Slack was sold last year to Salesforce for $27 billion. And the big fear was that was going to ruin Slack because Slack had so much goodwill from being this kind of more grassroots type business. And certainly with businesses in mind as their customer base. But Salesforce so far has not ruined Slack, and I would hope that Microsoft's having now bought Bethesda, GitHub, Minecraft haven't ruined those in the colloquial sense just yet.
Well, they ruined Bethesda for PlayStation users.
Oh, sure.
Well, that's different. That's just smart business. And you're right to be talking about it on the super high level, but think about it for Xbox, who's just getting crushed by PlayStation the last couple of years. Integration of Discord into Xbox could be really, really huge, and it wouldn't be a massive lift potentially to make that happen.
Yeah,
and that would be a really great experience, I think, for a lot of player gaming on that platform. Now they just have to figure out, games people actually want to play on it. But, they can get there.
That's a really interesting point.
That would connect the Xbox experience with the PC experience.
That's exactly what I was going to say, that's a thing that they've tried to do forever with games for Windows and with the Xbox software for streaming and stuff. But you have this massive player base that's isolated in this walled garden that they've created in the console space. Cross-platform, just in communications, has not worked well. And so imagine that you have people on their couches playing, right? You don't like, what does Discord on Xbox look like? But it can be the same version of a thing that the living room big screen version of the thing, like Steam big screen version of the thing that people already have built in hundreds of millions of computers. That's really powerful.
Or more importantly, it's just a service that's always running that you are then connect you with your friends no matter where they are, if they're on the phone, PC, Xbox.
Right. And Discord is something people use actively on their phones too. Like when's the last, like Steam as a gaming conversation service, like Messenger isn't a thing that I use on my phone, right? It's a thing that I think about being on in a desktop window. Yeah, $10 billion is the rumored price. Moving from Microsoft to Nintendo, the rumors are ramping that Nintendo is going to put out a follow-up to the Switch this holiday season with all the hardware we talked about last time. 4K output, 7-inch screen, still 720p screen, making a lot of sense for OLED. Hopefully called Super Nintendo Switch. But they're also saying because they're probably going to stick with NVIDIA as their supplier, they're going to take advantage of DLSS, which is deep learning super sampling, as a way to get older Switch games or maybe even new Switch games upscale to 4K resolutions on TVs. DLSS work great.
It's not even about 4K on TVs to me. It's about getting past 720p on that screen to something closer to 1080. Like, I know you don't need to go that far, but that's been a limitation. That 720 on the screen has been a huge limitation for the Switch.
Whoa, you're saying on the handheld or on?
Yeah,
it's going to be 720 on the handheld. That's not the DLSS.
They're not going to go to 1080 on a Switch Pro.
No. And were you on the episode when we talked about this? There's
maybe.
No reason to have a 1080 panel on a 7-inch handheld because at a traditional 10-inch distance you play from the screen, most people can't tell a difference, and you'd rather have the battery life. Plus, Switch games are probably still going to render locally at 720 anyway, and you're doing upscaling when you plug it into TV, no matter what.
Yes, this is all coming back to me. I was vaguely thinking that any Switch Pro would be a bigger device than the Switch too.
7 inches would slightly bigger. Yeah. Well, if the Switch isn't for you, Qualcomm might be putting out something that's for you. What was that name of that? Wasn't the Ouya? What was was there
the Kickstarter Android-based console?
Yeah, that was
$99.
That was a set-top box, right? But there was no handheld version of the Ouya. This feels like an handheld Ouya. Right. Let's take a form factor people love. You running ARM, running some version of Linux, and with detachable controllers. Nintendo doesn't have the patent on detachable controllers, but the report is that Qualcomm will, with their chip, of course, put out a handheld console that you could plug in the TV and play, or you could play like a Switch.
I wonder. I mean, I feel like Nvidia tried this a while back with their
The Shield.
Remember they had the Shield.
That's what I was thinking of, the Shield. Yeah.
And I just feel like no one's figured this out except Nintendo, and maybe that's because there's only room for one. I don't know.
Well, the Shield was interesting in that their big thing wasn't just playing games locally. Like you could play it was an Android device. You could play Android games, but Shield was one of the first places to allow local streaming. So if you are on Wi-Fi at home, you could stream from your NVIDIA graphics card and PC games to the portable device, which you can do to anywhere now on Android phones, iPhones, from game consoles and whatever, right? Like that's become a new normal thing. Still probably not taken advantage of, but that's where I thought Shield was powerful. And now Shield is, I think, as a brand, is really just their kind of set top box. Yeah, the Amazon TV competitor. We'll go last bit. OnePlus. I personally do not know I don't know a single owner of a OnePlus phone.
Oh, really?
I know a lot of people online who are OnePlus fans, but like none of the people I know in person are OnePlus owners. You know, when you think Android, they're kind of going to go Samsung, and most people probably Samsung or Pixel, or iOS on Apple's side. But OnePlus is really, really popular, and they put out a lot of great phones every year. They just announced their OnePlus 9 Pro and 9 phones. This is the one with partnership with Hasselblad. So they're putting like $100 million into a multi-year partnership with a camera company to develop better cameras. This one still uses a Sony sensor. So I think the first partnership is really in the software side for color correction. And it's $1,000 phone with all the fixins. Their big things on the screen is that the screen goes up to, I believe, 240 hertz. I might be wrong on that, but it goes down to 1 hertz. So when you're when you're like looking at a picture, it'll kind of sense what type of thing you're looking at. Or if you're just reading a web page, it will slow the refresh rate down to save on battery life.
I wonder what that means, though. Like the pixels can't stay on for a second, can they? They have to be refreshed, don't they? It's not like e-ink or something like that, which is like they stay on permanently.
No, but I guess the question is how fast it switches. Right, just like on the iPads have dynamic refresh rate, but the floor is pretty high. So even if it's slow to switch, you're never gonna go below a certain speed. Here, if you're talking about as low as 1 hertz, I don't know in what situations like does it just not want to switch. There's got to be good integration with the software, or if it's only within certain apps.
Yeah, the exciting things for me about this phone are sort of a couple-fold. Like, one, it looks like the S20. So people that have complained, I think going back to like the 4 and the 4T, there was some complaints about how it looked and felt. This, is going to look good. The resolution's off the charts, as you said, this sort of like adaptive refresh. I'm really excited about this fast wireless charging that they have. So they have like a 4,500 milliamp battery, and it has two the fast charger that they're marketing with this has two 25-watt chargers in parallel that charge the battery together.
Really?
And that's how they get to 50 watts, which is kind of like, is that true? But some reviews said that you can get a full battery charge in 45 minutes from wireless charging,
That's crazy.
Which is like too fast. Like it's almost like it's like, isn't that like, is it going to be hot kind of thing?
That's amazing. But you need their charger to do that, right?
Well, yeah, because the ones like if you buy an Anchor one, they're only 10-watt chargers, so you're not going to get that kind of speed without the power difference.
Plus, you need the two connection points, the two contact points.
So I'm just interested to see how that runs. I think we're getting to the point where the camera parts of these phones are starting to commoditize. We're seeing a lot of like they're all kind of blending together, and it's really about the software. My concern about OnePlus has always been about Oxygen OS. Yeah. It's kind of like clanky. It doesn't get updates as much.
You lose support after 2 years, essentially, and it's slowed updates. Yeah,
like I'm curious what the reviews like in depth on it are. I've heard that it's a lot snappier than previous editions, and that's always been the thing that's held me back from switching to OnePlus overall. And since like Pixel stuff hasn't been great since the 3, I would actually think about this, but I'm not gonna upgrade my phone for another year maybe. But this is a great looking phone. It's just $1,000.
It's a phone made for specs. right? Like this is
Yeah.
a company
This is a
that's
max spec
so
phone.
it's
Yeah.
they have direct ties to good industrial engineering for fabs and for sourcing supplies for like the biggest sensors and the fastest screens, and it's a 120 hertz screen, but it's a 360 hertz response rate for the capacitive sensor. So like they're directly tied in to the supply chain, but it's still limited by Android and limited by the Auction OS and the integrations there. So unless they have unless they're spending money on camera apps in the way Apple has on their multi-hundred person digital imaging team, it's still it's a better phone on paper, but from the user experience side, that's a big question.
I'm interested by their business strategy of growing their company, and as the in starting with a very affordable phone.
Yeah.
It's almost like the opposite of Tesla, where they came out with the Roadster, which nobody could afford except the rich, super rich. And then they said, "This is an amazing, sexy electric car, and this is the what we want to make our company, the DNA." And then they eventually made the Model 3, which is the mass market car. And these guys started with the mass market phone, and now they're making the $1,000 phone.
Yep.
It's interesting.
The brand has been strong enough that there are a lot of people who are fans, and maybe fans just because they are the alternative to the big corporation, the big Sony, Samsungs, and the Apples of the world. But they also have a range of phones, right? So they also put out like the T version and the non-pro version, which is a $700. So they're going where the market is in terms of pricing, and clearly there's a lot of people spending a lot of money in the last year on devices and stuff. So they feel like they can justify it in the same way that Samsung had to backtrack on the pricing and just had to launch the A series of phones, of their Android phones, that are more affordable, because not everyone's going to spend $1,500 on an experimental foldable phone. I'm glad OnePlus hasn't gone there yet with the foldable phones. Let's just put it that way. And then one last bit with Apple. They discontinued the HomePod last week. Get them if you can while they're still in stock. But the HomePod Mini, it's turned out that there's a unknown, unpublicized sensor on the inside that has not been switched on, that could lead to future integrations with smart home products. It's not the first time, I think, like an Apple product has had kind of unknown features. But this is a temperature and humidity sensor built into the $99 HomePod Mini. So
Okay.
they don't have a Nest product, but and they have Home OS, or what is it? Is it called Home? What's the thing called? Their home. What's the
Home,
thing called?
is it just Home? Is it iOS Home?
iOS,
Is it Apple
yeah,
Home?
they have
yeah.
where you use the iPod or an Apple TV as your hub, but they definitely want to make inroads into the smart home business. No robots though, not like Amazon. No big robot play.
Not yet.
Yeah. Figure out the AR glasses first, I think. Do we want to do a moment of science, Kishore? Yeah,
Sure.
All right, let me cue up the music cue, and here where is it? Use this one. Wrong one, but let's go with it.
Now it's time for a moment of science.
I'm just going to fix that in post. I'm just going to fix it in post so the timestamp robot will get it right.
One of these days you'll organize the segue music.
I should organize the music based on the order in which the show goes.
So it's almost been 2 years since we got our first image of a black hole. There was a number of radio telescopes that looked at a supermassive black hole at the center of galaxy M87. And we saw this image of the disk swirling around the black hole, sending light. It was in the form of radio waves back towards us. And we saw this fantastic image of this sort of orange blob that was slightly brighter as it went around the black hole. And we also got light from the other side of the black hole, because light bends around black holes due to the gravity and they're just massive size. So what we got today was the release of 3 different papers analyzing the radio waves that are actually emitted, that generated that led to the generation of that image. And it took 3 years because there's this really painstaking effort that has to go they have to undergo to sort of understand what's going on here. So what we really saw was, even though this like stuff, all this like gas swirling towards the black hole is really hot, it's super hot. What we're really seeing is radio waves emitted from them, and the radio waves are emitted partially because of magnetic waves inside this superheated plasma as it goes around. And so we use that to understand what is actually going on in this, because when radio waves are emitted from these magnetic sources, the light that is coming off is actually, the light's polarized, and so you can actually see through different filters the actual magnetic lines that are actually going through this. And from that, you can infer all sorts of things about mass, about speed, about heat, all sorts of other elements. And these 3 papers really started to dissect that. And they found a few just like incredibly fascinating things. They were able to actually see how much mass was sort of getting, quote unquote, consumed by this black hole. And what they found is that this black hole is consuming the weight of the Earth about like every 12 hours. So it is consuming an enormous amount of mass. And then they're actually able to calculate the magnetic field strength that's there. It was about 30 Gauss, which is only about, depending on, how you calculate it, it's like, about uh, 30 times that of the Earth magnetic field. So it's strong in the context of what we experience on Earth, but because of the nature of this is so big that it is exceptionally strong magnetic field. And this is all just like fascinating, because the images they released along with this point at the magnetic field within this plasma that's going around the black hole. And they're using this to look at other black holes at the centers of other galaxies to kind of get a sense of what the nature of these black holes are. And so one of their targets that's going to come up is the black hole at the center of our galaxy. There's a supermassive black hole at the center of almost every galaxy that we've observed, and there's an especially large one at the center of the Milky Way. And so they'll be looking at this. This takes a long time to do, but it's really, really interesting, and I encourage people to kind of look at some of the images that have been observed, because it's just kind of amazing processing work. Just 2 quick stories. So an update on Ingenuity. I know Jeremy said this is sort of like icing on the cake.
Yeah.
But Percy's on its way to the spot where Ingenuity is going to be pooped out from the rover. It's probably like 5 days away from getting to that spot. It's a couple hundred meters from where it started. The heat shield has already come off of Ingenuity, and it's on the ground. So Percy's gonna drive out there. It's gonna take a day, maybe 12 hours, for the Ingenuity to come down off the river. So it's a really slow process. And then Percy's going to drive away off from distance, so that the dust that's going to be generated when Ingenuity does its test flights don't interfere with its scientific instruments. But probably in about 2 weeks or so, we're going to get the first sort of power up. And NASA released the flight area that Ingenuity is going to cover. And so you can kind of take a look already, and now we're just in that slow waiting game for the icing on the cake.
Do you know what we
Helicopter.
expect to see from, in terms of footage of the flight, either from the perspective of Perseverance or the copter itself?
I think we're going to see images from Perseverance of it moving around, and I would imagine like a very kind of almost like low poly GIF of it
Yeah.
moving around as the first thing that we'll see, and then we'll see something from the perspective of the drone. But I think the images from Percy are going to be more impactful in terms of what we see.
It's going to
'Cause
take
we're going to
off,
see
then
literally something in the air.
descend into a Martian bowling alley, then do a couple of laps around the bowling alley while people are staged and eating, and then fly around and make it a story into the New York Times.
Speaking of drones, though, There is one thing everyone should look at on YouTube. There's a volcano eruption going on right now in Iceland. It's a relatively small volcano eruption, but it's in an accessible area, so you can hike up to it. It's about a 3-hour hike from areas. And somebody flew a drone through a volcanic eruption, and it's on YouTube. It is incredible, incredible footage of lava just spewing in the air, and that drone is like in the middle of the plume. I have no idea how it withstood that kind of heat, but it is something just beautiful to behold, and I encourage everyone to check it out.
I mean, now this is officially a multi-video genre of drones with Eric Chang's, Icelandic volcano footage, and he did a whole presentation on that at our first live show, where he brought that inspired drone that he flew over a volcano and the melted GoPro that was retrieved from it, where we got that footage. So incredible stuff. Way cooler, I think, than flying through fireworks with a drone. Probably, more safe for the people. No people around the volcanoes. That does it for science this week. We're going to do a really quick VR minute. Here we go. The VR minute. Virtual reality this week. Jeremy, you weren't here last week, but news had just broke about the PlayStation controller. So I wanted to get your thoughts on the next-gen PSVR for PlayStation 5 controller that we've just seen images and little details on. Will and I had a nice chat about it, but what do you think?
I honestly, the PlayStation 5 controller, and I've said this before, is the reason why I wanted to get that console, and I was lucky enough to get one a couple weeks ago, and it has surpassed my expectations. Like the haptics in that controller are next generation. And if we were still running projections as a regular show, I would insist that we do an episode on it, even though it's not VR, because it is haptics and it applies. And this is exactly what I was hoping Sony would do: is put them inside the PlayStation controller.
And these are the triggers, the
yes.
adaptive
triggers.
And
I expect them to have all of the haptics that they have in the gamepad, which are like linear actuators as opposed to just rumblers.
Right.
Where it really things walk across the controller, like it's crazy.
But you don't really feel there's no touchpad. There's no touchpad on the like there is on the the DualSense controller.
That's not what I'm talking about. Like the rumbling haptics in the controller make it feel as though things are walking across it. Right. Like they can do that. So yeah, you're right. You're not holding it with two hands, but I imagine there will be an array of actuators on
I wonder. That's a good question. Does that haptic work better because you have multiple anchor points with two hands?
Yeah, maybe.
Or with does the balance and the form factor of a VR controller limit what type of haptics they can simulate?
But the standout feature is those triggers. And it's so cool. Like it's just they can do anything they want. They can make it feel like there's there's a click to the trigger, or they can give a rumble if you're driving, or a machine gun kind of thing. And it's so neat because it doesn't feel like a motor. It feels like the way the trigger is built. It just feels like something inherent to whatever mechanism is inside the device, but it's codable. Like it can be whatever they want. It's really neat. So fantastic. I hope Oculus is taking note of this, and Valve, and they are like, we have to keep up with haptics as much as we're keeping up with the HMD side of things.
Yeah. At South by Southwest, what was announced wasn't actually, because we had been recording the podcast right as that thing was happening. It wasn't the blog posts about the neural wristband controllers that Oculus talked about they were working on. There's actually a new avatar system for the Horizons that they showed at South by Southwest. They look still a little cartoony, but definitely more expressive. And even though they're just tracking the sound waves coming out of our mouth and are doing some AI tricks for where the eyes are connecting without having eye tracking, it's pretty compelling. You have, it's not floating hands, it's a floating torso. And Horizon's still in beta, but this is going to roll out to that, and then the rest of the Oculus platform. So it's a culmination of a lot of the AI technology we saw, like Michael Abrash talk about, without the kind of face tracking stuff just yet.
Wonder what's going on with Horizon.
I think they're integrating this. I mean, the beta test, they have the whole, moderation needs to be a big thing. I don't think it's going to go away, but I think they're smart to launch it right. But definitely, what a missed opportunity timing wise, right? In this past year, while people are working from home post launch of the Quest 2, because
we were hoping to see it at Oculus Connect.
I
That was
know.
6 months ago.
And we saw the early version a year and a half ago at the previous
Yeah.
Connect when we were there in person. Yeah. And then congratulations to Rec Room. It was just announced. I think maybe it was Wall Street Journal broke an embargo on this, but they're getting a new round of investment that values them at $1.25 billion. They have grown massively, not just across, of course, VR, but being on flat screen games as well. Maybe it's time we dove back in the Rec Room and see what's changed, see what's up. But it seems like people are very excited, investors, and internally they're very confident in their growth as a digital social platform.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of fond memories in Rec Room, the three of us.
Yeah.
Playing now a lot of that is on Quest. The Rec Royale's on Quest 2.
Yep.
And the Pirate Quest is on Quest. It's awesome. Love Rec Room.
Yeah, we do, totally. And that does it for this episode. 8 days and counting till BB number 2 arrives. I think we'll record one more episode next week. Anything you guys want to promote or shout out before we wrap up?
Fatherhood.
Minor league hockey games.
There you go. Kong vs. Godzilla will be the last thing I watch, or Godzilla vs. Kong. I never remember which one it is. The last thing I watch next Wednesday before we head to the hospital for the delivery. We got some cool videos on Tested, of course, coming up. More one-day builds. You're going to see Adam working on his Iron Man Mark 1 armor a bunch. That's basically built to completion. And I should have a video out later today, depending on when you're listening to this podcast, where I'm testing a new time-lapse photography method for my resin printing. This is a product called Resin Lapse that the Uncle Jesse cosplay put out, and has worked pretty well so far. So hoping to share that footage on the channel later today. But until then, thanks so much for listening. We have an outro from our archive of outros, which I queued up, and now it's where tab is it in? You can find Kishore online at where Science Quiche, Jeremy, Jerware. Yes?
Yeah, man.
And why don't we play this one called Baby Fish? Who knows what this sounds like? All right, here it goes. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Hi there, I didn't see you.
Tested.
Baby fish creep me out.
Baby fish creep you out? Why is that?
All right. Are we moving on?
That's it for this week.
All right, then.
Tested.
I have no recollection of that whatsoever.
Me neither.
Someone tell us what episode that was from. What was the context of that conversation?
Actually, don't tell us. I think we're okay.
Fatherhood. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.